the end of our presentations, and now we can start with our Q&A session. Again, we will have 15 minutes for this. Some of the questions are already here. I'll be starting with them, and then if we have any time left, I want to ask new questions, including my own. So first question is from Esra Melody Butcher. She asks, during the pandemic, did you find anything that is useful for education and that you would want to keep after the pandemic? Actually, we can ask this to all of our panelists. Maybe each one of you can give a short answer about this, or maybe you can write about it, write it down on the chat briefly. Ivan, Elif, Melinda, and Sarolta, can you please answer the question?
We had some pictures in our presentation about how creative work evolved from inspirational photographs, and these photographs were mostly found on the internet. So I think this inspirational photo and creative process based on visual inspiration is something we have found to be effective, and we are using it now because we already started offline education again, and we were discussing about our conclusions, and this is a method we found useful.
Thank you so much. Would you like to add anything? So, according to my observations, one of the key factors that increases motivation is to be able to interact, whether it be face-to-face or an online environment. So as such, things that can be done collaboratively. Of course, I'm speaking for the pandemic period. Such interactional activities can increase motivation, whether it be virtual or physical, but things are not in our hands. Things are not in our control, not ours, are theirs, the students. So this interaction can be required to be very physical, and in Cyprus, we had students that couldn't go back to their countries, to maybe Africa or maybe Northern Europe, European countries. Students who couldn't even leave their dormitories and even their rooms sometimes, and still kept participating in class. So yes, these were some factors that really decreased motivation, but still this, yes, of course, this was a global crisis we had, but to try and increase interaction and to instill the feeling that we are doing something together collaboratively, I think this would be effective. I have seen this was effective in class, and I think it still holds effective. Thank you so much. And Ivan, I guess you are here. Can we ask you the same question? Can you please answer the question of which practices during the pandemic did you find beneficial, did you find useful, and you are still implementing them? I guess there is this slight miscommunication between us. So I'm moving on to another question for Elif Hanım. Konur Kolday says, I've really found Inktober very useful, which included in our course, and maybe you can give us an online address which we can reach the visuals for it. Yes, I value such activities very much myself. We had already been conducting it for the last 4 years, and we held the 5th one this year. Students get to interact one-on-one and in groups, and they get to create their own pages, and they get to see others' pages. So this is very valuable. This is a very valuable environment of interaction. I can actually give you the hashtag on the chat box. If you just use that use that hashtag, you can find the projects works of the students that were in my course. Yes, thank you so much. I will check that myself on social media, definitely. And dear Figen also had a question for you. Maybe other participants, other panelists can answer this as well, because it has to do with motivation. So how can we keep motivation high in a digital education environment? And how can we use media effectively to this end? So Melinda and Sarolta, I think you can answer this question as well. Because from my observations, according to my observations, we also had some advantages on online platforms. Maybe we could have, let's say, shared sketches. We could try out some of the techniques much more efficiently. And some of the sessions, we uploaded them on the shared documents, shared files on the web. And so students did not see only their own work, but also the works of their peers. And the criticism also was much faster on the online environment, because we had the chance to just write down on each other's works, which we normally cannot on a physical environment. So would you have anything to say about those? I mean, I'm going to ask you all of this, but let's start with Elif Hanım. Okay, let me put it this way. In the digital environment, I can tell you that giving criticism is now a much better experience, because in this classroom before, we had to talk to students one-on-one, and the others just kept on whatever they were doing at that time. And as such, on the online environment, if you can just open the document and you can just evaluate them together with the class, everyone will participate more. That's what my experience is. And we wanted, not only me, but we wanted required students to peer review and also criticize their own work. So we started to implement some methods which we were not using before. I think this had its advantages. This change had its advantages in enriching the methods used. And I think I saw the biggest advantage, biggest increase in the topic of criticism, because now everything is much more transparent. In the past, of course, things were transparent as well, but people just minded their own project, or their own work, or their own business. So I think it is now much more beneficial and much more healthy for students to see each other's works. Thank you. Thank you. I agree with you. I agree 100% with you. I want to ask Melinda and Sarota if you want to add anything.
Yes, thank you. If you could add something, yeah, I would follow on the previous comments that the reward system become very important and motivational. And we find out that we used Instagram platforms as rewarding the best projects. So publicity became the positive aspect, that they were motivated to do better and better works, because then they were published on our department's Instagram site, which is usually an interesting thing to get more reviews. As you mentioned, they could comment on each other's pictures, and then the likes were showing them how good they performed. And actually it get outside of the strict architectural environment. So actually other non-professional people could see their works and appreciate it. And I think this was a thing which was a very positive and motivational area for our students.
Yes, by the way, I checked out your Instagram account, Instagram page. It really looks so nice and productive. And another drawer actually mentioned that they were using similar resources like Instagram for coming up with color palettes. So for Melinda and Sarolta, I'll have a similar question. In architectural education, location and the special education is very important. And in some of your works, 3D objects are very important. So you showed us an example that was almost a comparison. So which one was done in the physical environment and which one was done in a digital environment? Maybe you could go back to the that slide. So there's materials, characteristics, and feature concept. Which kind of pros and cons did you have during the pandemic and during your study while you were reviewing them?
So, yes, okay. I'm trying to find the appropriate slide where we are referring to this comparison. But actually, yeah, let's come here, for example. So the first picture was done in a physical environment, and the second one in a digital at home. And it's especially interesting because the task was to concrete molding, and so in class we could help them how to pour the concrete and how to get it dried and then decast it. And at home they have done everything alone by themselves without any experienced help or assistance. But actually, I guess for the students it was more challenging, but still came out with maybe with a deeper learning process. So they needed to figure out all the details. They had to receive other instructions like other helps from the internet, Google, as we know. So maybe less human help or professional help, but more on their own. The same appeared with this second one. Sorry.
And so the previous one, I would like to add for the previous ones that these are both physical models. Just the difference was that in the second part, when students produced the models at home by themselves, they could share us what they wanted to share. So they consciously or not so consciously, but integrated digital tools in the creating of the space. So in the creative process, so they made a photograph of the best part or the best angle or something which they, if they wanted to hide a part which they thought is not so successful, they could done that. And this is the difference between the two, because in the first case we could see it in 3D and we could hold the model and we could examine all the parts, and in the second one we just received pictures and the pictures themselves were the product.
Thank you very much. It's so nice to see that different outcomes have been obtained recently. That's what we have learned actually during this time. So we have got only 1.5 minutes left. Do you have any questions? Or if there are any new questions, we may pose one or two. I don't see any questions now. I would like to add one more question. This is a general question again to any of you. While providing a course in a workshop setting, we were focusing on each other and on the setting, the space itself. We were not making use of that unbelievable amount of resources on the internet or mirror-like platforms. We didn't make use of them. So I think that there has been a change. I have noticed that the number of resources is huge and they are feeding us. So I wonder how you think about it. Just as a closing sentence, what do you want to say with regard to this experience of yours? I can say the following. Actually, everybody has become more visible to each other. Everybody was doing something somewhere, but they were not sharing it. At the moment, lecturers are also sharing a lot of resources. what we are doing in that at this setting is also important. IDA-like institutions, their trainers' web pages also show such examples, just as our lecturer said. Resource sharing was important, but we weren't engaged in that matter so much. We started to become more curious about what others are doing, and this interaction has increased. The interaction between students, interaction between students and lecturers, and the one between lecturers and lecturers. The pandemic has changed this, and we should continue using these different platforms, sharing of more resources, transfer of more resources, developing things together. We will be continuing with that, I guess. Thank you very much. We have come to the end of our time. We are thankful for these beautiful presentations, for being here, for your articles also. I hope to see them as a whole in the book. Take care. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.